So now this dough here that we have is ready to be shaped. So the way that we shape it, we're gonna heavily flour. You should have put your hand. That's a lot. The way that we shape it is as such. What are you looking for? Oh, she's oiling the pan, the bread pan. Yeah, you're touching it to shape it. You don't touch it to knead it. But when we're shaping it, we're not kneading it again right now. So you'll see. Well, we're rolling the dough to give it its shape. Ready? Okay, so we're just gonna flip over the dough until it falls out onto a heavily floured surface. Because remember, it's a very sticky dough, so you want the surface to be very floured so it doesn't stick to the surface. It's sticking to the bowl, which is, there she comes. Just tilt the other way. There it is. And spatula. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna stretch out the dough to make a large rectangle, and then we're gonna fold it as if you're folding a paper in three. So fold one side in, the other side over, and then roll it up. Pinch the ends, and that's your dough. So she's just gonna stretch it out. You can just pull the edges, kind of like if you're making a pizza, I guess. Pull the edges until it's a fairly large rectangle. Pretty even all around. And then you usually want to roll it the long way. So right now, the way that she has it, it's longer this way than it is this way. So when we're rolling it, we usually flip like this way, like the tray. Oh, shoot. Ready to roll it? Okay, so that's one way. That's folded in three, so the other one goes on top, and you're gonna flip it around, and you're gonna roll it like. Okay, and then she's gonna pinch the ends of the dough to seal up the ends, and then drop it into the. You didn't pinch the ends. The other end. Just to close the dough. And then that's the dough. So that's how you shape it. So there's no real kneading in this dough. That's the loaf. That's the loaf. That's done. No, that's it. That's all it is. And then saran wrap. We don't. Oh. So while we have the oven preheating, you'd leave this to get a last final rise. Ouch. So what, about 15 minutes? Yeah, something around there. Yeah. Very nice. We bake this at 375 for 35 to 40 minutes. The goal is to get the internal temperature. We use like a turkey thermometer to at least 190. That's the best way. And then this is the finish. So we go I'll take this. I'll move this over.
Outside to right.
Outside.
Yes, you can put some extra flour if you want to.
There's the bread. That's the finished loaf. No, it's not very heavy.
So if you use a different kind of flour like spelt, same ingredients, you have to do more.
Well, spelt, we use the spelt interchangeably with the whole wheat. Exact same.
Okay, so you don't use pure spelt. Spelt. You use half whole wheat, half spelt.
When I use spelt, I use all spelt.
All spelt.
Yes,
We've done half and half
you
spelt.
did.
Oh.
I didn't.
Any other kind of flour that Seventh-day Adventists like to use? Camus?
I don't know what that is.
It's a grain.
How about sourdough? I keep hearing.
It will be coming. It will be coming.
Okay, so sourdough.
It's coming after. Yes. Okay. It was a suggestion, but it's a lot of work, and I don't have much storage to store it, so it don't go, so it can be fresh. So yeah, because this was baked Thursday. We are counseled that the yeast in the bread have to sit for I think 48 hours. So this bread was baked since Thursday. So if I baked it prior, it had to be frozen to sell it. But I don't have the freezer space. So sorry. But we had bread yesterday. I don't know if anyone had the bread yesterday. No one here had bread yesterday? Okay, so that's from the same batch. Yes. And we'll be making butter. There was butter that was on the bread yesterday, and a couple people was asking for butter. So it's a surprise. I never told anyone we were going to do it. We actually decided this morning when we were leaving to make butter. So now we'll make butter, and this bread, someone can take it to the kitchen. I can ask Shirlene, because she knows how to do those things already. Slice it and toast it. And when the butter is ready, we'll butter it. And I don't know if everyone here don't very strict with their diet. If you're not, like eating between meals, you can have bread and butter after. But if you're strict, another time. Okay, so we'll ask Shirlene to do this.
Okay, so you can give it to her.
Yeah, and now we'll do the butter.
Okay. This. It's somewhere. It's there. Yeah. Yeah, it was half and half. This one is half and half. Oh, when the bread's in the oven. No, you don't turn the bread in the oven. You just put it in, and then when time's up, you take it out. Yeah, convect bake. Cause if your bake is only like a top bake, the top of the bread will cook before the bottom. So that's why you want convect bake. Right. Okay. Where's the stuff? Okay.
Well, I believe Sister White talked about both bread, the sourdough and yeast. So I don't know if there is one she talked more about.
Here.
That's the sourdough or the fermented.
Yeah, that's sourdough.
Yes, someone is coming with that. We'll be doing that. Yes, yes.
Okay. Butter. There's 3 ingredients in butter. 4 ingredients. 5. 5 ingredients in butter. We use 2 types of oil. Coconut oil, extra light tasting. You could use regular coconut oil, but then your butter would taste like coconut oil. So, extra light tasting and extra light tasting olive oil. Yep. Extra light tasting olive oil. And then this is soy lecithin. Soy lecithin. It is an emulsifying, right? An emulsifying thing. Lecithin.
No, we have never used the granules, but I was told you can.
Okay. I think it was half. I divided the measurement. Yeah. So half. So this is how you're gonna make the butter. Half cup of water in one. You don't have the thing. Another jar to mix the oil. Well, we can use this, I guess. Okay. So we put the water and the salt in one jar. Is half teaspoon? One teaspoon? Half tablespoon. Half tablespoon. Half tablespoon. And then you're gonna mix that until it dissolves into the water. And in another bowl, we mix the 2 oils and the lecithin. How much oil is it? It is half cup and 2 tablespoons of oil. We divided the recipe, so usually it's 1 cup and a quarter. So this is half cup, 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, and 6 tablespoons of olive oil. Half cup and 2 tablespoons of coconut oil, 6 tablespoons of olive oil, and 1 tablespoon of soy lecithin. 1 tablespoon. So we mix the oil and the lecithin together in one jar, the water and the salt together in another jar. Once again, it's half cup water, half tablespoon salt.
And a tablespoon lecithin.
Okay, I'm gonna run through it. I'm just gonna run through it from top to bottom. Half cup, 2 tablespoons, extra light tasting coconut oil, 6 tablespoons, extra light tasting olive oil, 1 tablespoon soy lecithin, half tablespoon salt, half cup water. So the water and the salt is in one jar, the 2 oils and the lecithin is in the other jar. Usually, yeah, dip the your spoon in oil before you dip in lecithin, because the lecithin is very sticky. So a lot of it will stick to the spoon. So usually it's just dip the spoon in the oil before you portion out the lecithin. Okay. Oh, did we bring something to mix it?
What is the lecithin?
Soy lecithin. It's a byproduct of soy, and it's like they use it to like emulsify things. So you know how water and oil, if you put the 2 of them together, they're not gonna mix. When you put the lecithin into the oil, when you mix the water and the oil, they will stick together. They will come together to make one agent. Yes, so that's what it does. It combines. Pardon? Where, where do you buy it?
Baltimore no longer has it. No, but there is a Healthy Planet. Okay, there's also a store in Scarborough called Grains Enterprise. They have it there. Okay. Yes. Yeah. You want to blend? You want to plug?
Oh, we have to mix this first and then we blend
Yeah.
this.
You want to plug this?
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Yeah. You don't have to.
Try. There you go. Okay. I don't think we brought a spoon to mix this.
Okay, Judah. You don't have to.
Okay. So this is what you're gonna use to mix the two of them together. You have to mix it up until it comes together. It's like we said, it's water and
I have a secret ingredient that I put in my butter. I put a little bit of lemon juice, about a teaspoon of lemon juice. If you like the strong taste of butter, the lemon juice tends to bring it up. Lots of people would use nutritional yeast, but I don't use nutritional yeast, so I use lemon juice instead. You can use about half a teaspoon to a teaspoon.
okay.
No, it's just to bring out the butter taste. Yes.
Do you want me to pour it while you?
You have to keep the blender going.
This is just the water and salt.
We just add in.
We're adding this so it's
Together.
to keep it, yeah, moving. Okay. Oh boy, I dropped it on the ground. You have to move this. This is not enough space. Can you move this? I dropped some of the lecithin on the table, so we're gonna need to add a little bit into the thing.
Yeah, we'll do that after.
Okay. Okay.
We had a boo boo. We had a boo boo, so we have to add some more.
Okay. So you see the water and the oil now comes together to form a kind of like a creamish consistency. And this is gonna be your finished butter. You'll pour it into a jar, put it in the fridge up until it hardens, and then you start using it from there.
Does it separate at all?
No,
Not at all.
no. That's what the lecithin. If you blend it well and you put enough lecithin, it won't separate. That's the point of the lecithin. If you put the lecithin but it doesn't blend well, then you might see it separating a little bit.
So if you don't have one of those hand
You can whisk it like we've whisked it before. It just takes time. Yep. You don't have to put it back in the fridge immediately. It can hold its hardness, its shape for some time. but it has to store in the fridge. Yeah, so it's not like regular butter where you can like leave it outside and it's just gonna stay hard.
You
Yeah.
can go back in the fridge.
No. Once it's emulsified, then it sticks together. So if it melts, then it's just like melted butter. And then when you put it back in the fridge, it solidifies. Like even sometimes, if we have one jar, we might melt it down and put it back in the fridge just to kind of level it off the jar. So whether it melts and you put it back in the fridge or whatever, it's not going to separate. What's the shelf life? Well, butter goes down pretty fast at home, so.
I, from what I've heard, it's about 3 weeks. Since it has the lemon and the salt, yes.
The jar of the butter to see what it looks like.
No, but you can determine how much lemon you would like in it. You
It's
can
also
also.
not necessary, the lemon.
No, it's not.
Yeah. No, I'm just letting her know.
Okay. And if you wanted to make garlic butter, you can add herb and garlic to it. Like right now, roast your garlic. Yeah, whatever herbs you like, you add it in here and you mix it again, and you have a garlic butter or herb butter. You would, what I would do usually, you can do it fresh, crush it fresh, or you can roast the garlic and then add it to there. Depends on how garlicky you would like the flavor.
I missed a step. So you said first mix water and salt with immersion blender, and then slowly mix in the lecithin. When did you add the blender?
Okay. So the water and the salt you don't need to use the blender for. You can just mix it up until the salt dissolves. And the soy, lecithin, and the two oils you put together and mix that, and in a separate jar. So you have one jar of the oils and lecithin, one jar of the salt water, and then you mix it together and you blend them together with this thing. Yes, we do. No, we don't have it on hand. We did repeat it a couple
We
times.
can,
Okay.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So we have 2 samples here that we're willing to give away. So plus the
Oh. I should just put this away. Okay, let me start cleaning up. I think that's it. That's butter and bread. Okay.
yes, hon. It has to go in the fridge now so it can set. So my sister over here, a butter for you. Yesterday you were inquiring about butter. Sister Hannah, you're close to me. You can stop by and you can get some. Yes, yes. Sorry. Yes, you can have the other one. Sorry.
I hope I will remember. I'm going to put it in the fridge.
Yes, please.
Think spell that lectin?
This again.
Yes. Lecithin.
I spelled it wrong. Thank you very much. And it's soya.
Yeah, soya.
I usually just use water, but I'm sure you can use milk. I'm sure you can. Yeah. I used the wrong word. Let's get the door so you can see how it rised.
Did it rise yet?
I don't know. done, yes. No, she's coming. She'll be coming. Did it rise at all?
No.
Hasn't rise?
No, it's been like 3 minutes.
Okay, so it's nothing. How about the one in the pan?
No, it's the same thing.
You want to bake?
No. It's
Hasn't
about the
rised?
same.
No. Okay, so guess it's not warm enough.
So. Yeah, well.
Okay, so we have the 2 loaves, one in the pan, I guess. We can give it away. I don't know if any. Okay, one is taken. There's another one. Who would like that other one? Okay, you split it. I'm Sharon, and yeah, you can split it. Sorry. Pardon? The one yours what's your name again? Paulette. Yes, Paulette one has to bake soon, like now.
It'll override.
Oil will overrise, and the
That's the
texture won't be
thing.
the same.
So it's like.
Felicia's oven is on right now because someone is toasting the bread. So once it rises, she can put it in the oven now. You can put it in the oven now if you wanted to. Yeah. Question?
Oh, this one?
It's rotten. For molding? Okay, what I learned is there are 2 things. You do not keep it in a plastic bag because it grows moisture. So that's why I had it in a brown sandwich bag. Yes, the paper bag or just a towel.
Well, 35 minutes, 375
375, 35 minutes.
to 45. 35 to 40 minutes.
Yes. Pardon? It molds faster. Yes. And also, usually you slice your bread from the end to the middle and you eat from the end. It's recommended that you slice it in the middle. So both ends will always be together, prevent moisture from coming in.
Put it from the middle from drying out.
Yes, both.
So what you're saying is like you cut the bread in half, cut 2 slices off either end, and then put the two ends back together so it comes back together like one whole loaf. Like you're just slicing out the middle. So that would.
Long ways down the middle.
Yeah, so like if you have. Yes, who's this? Yeah, so if you have the one loaf of bread, cut it down the middle in half, and then you cut the 2 slices off. You take 2 slices off and take what's left and put it together. So those 2 ends are gonna help to stop the 2 open cuts from drying out. Yeah. And then put it, yeah.
Middle.
Exactly. So when you just cut the end and you have the end open, it tends to dry out the bread a lot faster. Okay. This is water.
Any more questions? I used to, not anymore. You, most likely, someone said Healthy Planet. Grace, where did you find your lecithin?
There's a store in Perth, Ontario.
Oh, okay. But there's also a store, so you can try it.
I use the granules to make the same recipe that you use. Me, I use the granules.
Okay, and it came out fine? So, yeah. Yes, someone had a question? Pardon? Pardon? What is
Like, if you want her contact? Oh, are you giving out your contacts?
Oh, sure, I can. Okay, I think we're finished.
Yeah, I think so. Let me take this. I'm gonna empty this out, and I'll bring this the dishes. There, let me empty this out.
Grace, I'm finished. She's coming. He went with the picture.
Good morning, everyone. Man, you guys sound like you're hungry. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so I'll be talking a little bit about making the sourdough starter. I won't be able to do a presentation, the full making the bread today, but in making sourdough bread, the most important part is the starter, and that's where people tend to have problems. And the process of making the bread is similar to what you saw done this morning. So I'll just be talking a little bit about sourdough starter, talking about how it's made, the benefits of it, and I'll tell you a little bit of my story into getting into sourdough starting. Well, baking bread with a sourdough starter. I do have a starter that's going around, and this is a starter. If anybody has a glass jar, you can have some of it, because I just took some from my own home. And I'll pass it around for you to see what a healthy starter is. You'll see bubbles. I fed this on Friday morning, I think, and I just put it in my fridge. And then, so now that I took it out this morning, you can see the bubbles that tells you that it's ready to bake a bread or whatever you'd like to do. So I'll pass it around while I talk. So please just be careful. And you may smell a whisk of, like bread, yeast smell, and that explains. Okay.
And you put that in the fridge, I thought, to get yeast dough and you kept it on.
Well, I'll explain a little bit. So you have a new starter and then you'll have a mature starter. All right. So that is more of a mature starter, but I'll talk. So when after I left college, I went as a missionary to Brazil and I stayed with a family. And every Sabbath they would make fresh bread. And I just liked that idea, on Sabbath as a family, you come together, make fresh bread. And that instilled in me something that I want to do with my own family. When they make it, I know it's not the best thing to eat at the same time, but just the whole idea of it. So during COVID, the COVID, people have more time on their hands. I had a young baby, so I'm like, okay, let's get into making bread. I didn't know the difference between sourdough and commercial yeast or anything like that. But then YouTube University, which we all know about, right? I went to YouTube University and I found out, oh, you can make bread with yeast. And where would we go? Bulk Barn. When I went to Bulk Barn, there was no yeast because it was a bread making craze. So then I found out that, oh, I don't need yeast to make bread. So let me find the other way of making bread. And that was by sourdough. So that's how I stumbled onto sourdough. So that's just my story in sourdough. So as you can see, I am new to this. 2 years, 3 years, but I have learned a lot along the way, which I'm willing to share. If there's anybody else with more information, feel free. I was supposed to be helping someone else, so I'm just stepping in, but I believe God can use me to help you in whichever way that you need. All right? So just a little bit about sourdough. So sourdough is ancient yeast. Back in the day, before the 1800s actually, there was no instant packet of yeast. So sourdough was actually passed down from generation to generation to families, and that's how they made their bread. And there are many benefits to both using commercial and traditional yeast. All right, so sourdough is another name that you'll hear for it is natural leavening. All right, and you hear in the Bible, leaven the bread, that's why it rises. All right, So I'll just share with you some benefits of, all right, first of all, what is sourdough? It's essentially yeast that you capture from the environment and also in flour itself. Because sourdough is essentially just water and flour. There's nothing else in it, just water and flour. So sourdough is essentially capturing or the yeast from the environment and from flour. All right, I'll show you some as we go along. So there are some benefits to using sourdough. One, if you have flour and water, you don't need anything else. And of course, salt to flavor it. So you don't necessarily have to go out to buy yeast if you don't have it, or, you know. Another thing is, because sourdough is a long process, not very long, not very short, a good sourdough bread will take up to 24 hours depending on the temperature. So it's a long process. So what happens with sourdough, it helps to break down the gluten in the flour before you eat it. So if you have ever heard of people with gluten sensitivity, right? So they tend to be able to eat sourdough and not have so much issues with their tummy. All right, did everybody get a chance to see? Because it breaks down the gluten, so it's easier for them to digest. So that's a benefit of sourdough. And also because it's made from just flour, it tends to be a little bit more nutritious. And the sourdough has many different yeast strains, so you're getting different vitamins and minerals from that sourdough itself because it's always capturing yeast. Rather than the yeast in the packet, nothing wrong with it that's what you can do. It's just one strain that is used to make it. Okay, so it's just a difference. I'm not saying one is better or the other, it's up to you. All right?
Is it always white flour?
Okay, so I'll get to that now. All right? So the basic recipe for making sourdough, as I said, is flour and water, plus patience and time. All right? I have to add that in. You can't, remember I had said to you that there's a difference between a baby starter and a mature starter. Remember I said that? So a baby starter cannot make bread, while a mature starter will make bread. So generally, the older your starter is the more potent it is, and the higher your rise will be in your bread. Okay? So I'll tell you how, so on YouTube, if you put in sourdough starter how to make, I'm sure you'll find 201 and a million videos, right? So it's up to you. I'm sorry about that. I'll turn this off. So it's up to you to find one that works. I tried different ones. There's one recipe that I tried the first time. It told me to put flour, water, and pineapple juice because pineapple juice will get the sourdough starter going. Me, not knowing anything, tried it, and my flour and water became black. so it's trial and error. But I can tell you, I am willing to share with you the recipe that I have done from trial that works. And I must say, this recipe that I'll share with you, when my first sourdough starter, because this is my second one that I shared, I had it for a year. Then I went away to Jamaica for 3 months and it died because, as you'll find out, you need to feed your sourdough starter. It's essentially like a baby that you need to feed it. So it died after 3 months because I don't know if it really died. My husband came home earlier and he saw how it looked and he threw it away. He's not here. So maybe I could have revived it. But anyway, I started from scratch. All right. So the easiest way I found to make my starter, I had a little bottle here. Where's Merlin? Merlin? Did you see a small mason jar on the table that was empty? Could I avoid? I'm just going to show how to make. Okay. Yeah, yeah. So before we get to that, so a very important thing to note with making sourdough starter is the type of flour that you use. All right? You can use essentially any type of flour, which is unbleached, okay? Because if you use bleached flour, it has been chemically altered and the natural yeast in it is dead. So from my research and from my experience, I have learned that the best, if you are starting out, your bread is not going to be like this type, but if you, for starting out, the best flour that I've found that to use is actually rye flour. And a lot of people will tell you that starting your sourdough starter with rye flour, you have a better chance of it making it, okay? Because it takes a while. So I tried it two ways. My first sourdough starter, I bought rye flour from a local mill. I prefer to get it locally rather than buying it in the store. You can do your research as to why people. I just prefer it that way. And then my second starter, I got a grain mill, which I grind my own flour, my own berries. So I have berries here, and I will grind them to make my flour. So anytime I'm making my bread, thank you very much. It's okay. This is rye. So I'm showing you for rye, but you can use any type of grain. But as I said, it's best, even if you buy it in the store. There's nothing wrong with buying in the store. I just personally don't anymore because I live in the country, I buy a big bag, so it lasts me longer. You know, your own situation. So today I'm gonna be using rye, but you can use any type of flour. So you can use spelt, you can use kamut, you can use all-purpose, any type, that you would use, even einkorn. So with sourdough, you can start with a certain flour, and as it goes, as over time, you can change it to another flour. All right. So my basic recipe is another thing. If you have noticed that you have to discard, you ever seen recipes where you have to discard when you're starting your sourdough starter? Do you understand what I mean by discard? Okay. All right. I explain. So for me, this is so the flour is important. The other thing that's important is the type of water that you use. It's best to use not tap water. Use just plain water. You can use well water, but water that's not chlorinated. Not chlorinated with no chlorine, okay? Yeah, this still can work also because that will, again, remember, we're trying to capture what is natural. Chlorine is not natural in things, all right? Just like with bleaching. So what I do, my general recipe, I start with, so let's say I like to start, if I'm doing a sourdough starter, because it's, the first week is important, I would start on a Sunday. Sunday morning, because you need to have 7 days blocked out to get it started. And it's a 2 for the recipe that I'm doing. It's every 12 hours, all right? So let's say not more or less 12 hours. So let's say it's Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, right? I want to start my starter. It's best to use a glass jar and not metal because the things will react with metal. Because remember, sourdough is a fermentation. So it's best to use glass, okay? So I would use a mason jar. Probably I should get a wide mouth. So I would start with a 1/4 cup of flour. And it doesn't have to be exact, but a 1/4 cup of flour. Put it in my jar. So it is actually what you do is equal the weight of water and flour should be the same. So in the measurement, a 1/4 cup of flour is equal to 2 tablespoons of water, all right? And then I use chopsticks. So when you find people will give away chopsticks, you can collect them to use. It's good to mix in. And then I would do 2 tablespoons. Another thing. Now in the summer, the time is warm. So you don't have to worry so much about it not, the process not starting. In the winter, when it is cold, it takes a little longer. It's best to start your sourdough starter in the summer, I believe. You can do it in the winter, but it will just take more babying. So you can either use, now that it's summer and it's warm, you can use room temperature water. But if it's in the winter, I generally use warm water, all right? So I would do 2 tablespoons, so on. And you may need to use a little bit more, all right? So this is telling me that I'm gonna probably need to use a little bit more water because it's too dry. So you just do it in small increments, all right? So you probably add another. And the thing is, with my flour, it has everything in it. It's not, the bran has not been taken out. So that's probably why it needs a little bit more water. So I'm gonna need to use another tablespoon. But if it's all-purpose flour, it will probably just use 2 tablespoons. But as I said, my flour has bran in it because I just grind the grains and that's it.
What's the consistency there?
All right, I'm gonna show you. So you want it to be a little runny. All right. I'll pass this around when I'm done. And again, I would put some more water in this because it's still too thick. And it's not an exact science, all right? don't think that it has to be. You're just trying to make sure that, so I wouldn't use 1 full, I would just use a little half. So approximately 1 tablespoon. So this is what you do, let's say 8 o'clock on a Sunday, right? And you make sure it's incorporated. And when you get your sourdough established, you can have it thick or runny. But now, when you're just starting, you try to have it at a little moist, all right? So I'll pass it around for you guys to see while I talk about what would be the next step. So remember, this is 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And you use your flour and your water, and that's it. So you can pass it around. And if you want to mix, that's fine. So that's Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. So I have a quarter cup of flour and 2 tablespoons of water. All right. So the following day, next 12 hours later. So let's say 8 o'clock, 7:38, 8:39, around that time. You'll add the same amount that you added initially to it. All right, so that is 12 hours later. Same amount, the same flour and water only. No, 12 hours later.
12 hours later. So that evening.
Yeah, evening. And if you want, I can give you the recipe and I can tell you who I got it from. YouTube, yeah. Why is what? You can ask the question. Others might want to know.
You couldn't do it like all at once.
You could, but the reason why I do it that way is you use less flour.
Oh, right, okay.
You see, if you look on YouTube, you'll see people say they use 1 whole cup of flour, and the process is discarding. And that was my problem when I started using sourdough starter. They use so much flour, and in the beginning, the first week, you would throw out so much flour that for me, that's just a waste. So I tried to find a recipe with the minimal waste. You need to discard because it is food that you need to discard. But if you can use a recipe that uses less discard, but I'll tell you what I did with my discard all right. So let's just go through the process and then I'll tell you some of the things that I did. So now we're talking about it's 8 o'clock, 7:30 in the afternoon, 12 hours later. Yes? I'm going to explain a little bit, okay? So 12 hours later, right? You're going to feed it again with the same thing, all right? Feed it. Oh, one thing I should have told you. Do not leave it in an airtight. Don't leave it airtight because we need air, all right? So what I would do sometimes, a mason jar cover, and just slightly put it on so that nothing can get in it, okay? And it can breathe. Or you could use a cheesecloth on top and just use the cover of the mason jar, okay? The ring, all right? So let's know. So now it's Monday. What do you do on Monday? So Monday morning, you have to feed. Remember, this is a baby, right? So second day, you're going to feed this. You're going to take away half of what you did, all right? And what I used to do, I just had a glass container in my refrigerator where the discard, so you're going to discard half of it, approximately. It doesn't have to be exactly. You're going to discard half of what you did and feed again. All right, so Monday morning at 8 o'clock, right? Monday morning at 8 o'clock, take out half of what's in there, and then you feed it again with the same a quarter cup and 2 tablespoons, or 3, depending on what type of flour you're using, all right? Let it sit, And then 8 o'clock, Monday evening, feed again, and you leave it overnight. All right? So this goes on for 5 days. How many? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, are you discarding
Every morning for the next 5 days, you're going to discard.
the mornings?
Yeah, just the morning, discard half, and then you feed. I'll give you the recipe if you text me after. I'm just letting you know the process. All right? That's what you can. So what I do, most persons, if you see on, they'll just throw it away. But what I started to do, I used to collect it in a jar. Oh, sorry. So what I used to do, because I was like, it's a waste, I got another glass container. It's best to store your stuff in glass containers. So I stored the discard every time in glass containers. And if I was making something, I could use it at that time. And then you'll realize that actually you'll see it changing. If you keep it, you actually see it changing because it does have a little bit of leavening building up. So for 5 days, that is what you're gonna do. So you feed it in the morning, okay? You discard half, feed, and then in the afternoon you feed again and let it go. All right, so you do this for 5 days.
You just discard once in 24 hours?
Once, yes, in the morning. All right. So after that, half of it, yeah. So you keep essentially you're discarding a little bit more with more or less more, but you have it. You can store it. On about the 6th day, you should start seeing your starter starting to have a little bit, probably not as much as this, but you will see some movement in it. Remember you guys saw like little bubbles? And what I used to like looking at, I don't know if you can see, because I use a glass jar, I'd like to see the bubbles on the side too. You can also see the bubbles sometimes on the side to show that it's growing and it's active. All right, so that's something else. So when I was doing my starter, yes. You won't see anything. It will, because you will be discarding. It will, because you're discarding. Now, you may ask, why are we discarding, right? All right. So just remember, what are we trying to do with starting your starter? We're trying to capture as much yeast, right? As much yeast in the environment. So by discarding some and adding fresh flour, you're giving your starter more opportunity to catch more yeast. All right. So that is what. So you're feeding it, giving it a greater opportunity to catch more yeast, because it's there for the 12 hours or 24 hours. It has used probably what's there already. So they need more. So remember, your starter has, the more yeast it has, the more active it is. That's why you're building it up by discarding. Yes.
The light is important.
The light? Well, light is important if you're in a cold environment. So the light will give it additional heat. Heat is important also with getting the starter started. So if it's, let's say it's cold, what some people will do is put it in their oven with the light on. Yeah. So that will create an additional heat for it to get. So as I said, it's better to start in the summer because it's warm and it will get moving better. So that is, so the light in terms of the heat, that is what it will do. All right. So by day 6, as I said, you may be able to, you see some bubbles. So you're seeing that your starter is actually developing, but it's still a baby starter. All right. Now by day 6, right, you will cut your feeding to once. The same amount. It's like a baby, right? When your baby is born, well, for those who are mothers, when they're just born, they eat a lot, right? But as they grow older and their stomach gets bigger, you cut down the amount of feeding. And it's the same thing with a starter. As it gets more mature, you don't need to feed it as much, but you still need to discard. And even though you may be seeing bubbles at day 7, it's not strong enough to make bread yet. You still need to feed it. So it's going to probably take like a month before your starter is ready to make bread. I don't know if anybody here can attest to that, like a month before it's really.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
I've used starter that has been very young, and all it does is frustrate you because your bread is not going to be softer.
Yeah, it's not going to rise. Mm-hmm.
It's not going to work for you. It's kind of like if you have a wood stove and you feed it with green wood and it's just not starting. It just frustrates you more than anything else.
Right.
You have to use that.
Yeah, so you need patience.
Yeah.
Patience is what you need in making sourdough bread. But even though your sourdough starter isn't ready to make bread, there are a lot of things you can do with your starter. All right? So I can share with you some things. All right, let's finish with the process. So after day 6, we switch to feeding once a week, and you're still discarding. Sorry, once a day. Sorry, thank you. Once a day. You're feeding it once a day, the same small amount so that you don't have so much, and you're always taking out half when you're feeding it, okay? You're always removing half of the discard, and as I say, you can put it in a container and you can use it in other things, all right? We're okay with the process. I can send you the list. Any questions about the process? The first 6 days, and then once a day, yeah. And yeah, for until your starter is established. Let's say for a month. So let's say we started this month, like August 1, yeah? So up until the 31st of August, your starter is still a baby. But let's say September 1, it should be good enough to do a bread. But so for the first month, you're still feeding and discarding, feeding and discarding. Yeah, you can. But when it's still in a jar, yeah. So when you're starting something, it's best to start small. Yeah. So when your starter is established, then you can, that when it's established, you can add as much flour as you want, and it will be established enough, and you'll have a bigger starter. Yeah, so I started with this small, but after a month, when it was established, I transferred it to a bigger jar, added flour, fed it, and then in, let's say, 3 to 4 hours, the starter was big enough to.
You could use it after those 3 or 4 hours to bake your bread.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even when your starter is established, you don't even need to feed. It's not a good practice, but you don't necessarily. You could just take it out of your fridge and just use it to make bread. It's not the best practice to do, but it will rise if your starter is established. Have I confused you? No, have I confused you guys? No. You just have your starter. So we'll talk about now. So we're talking about we have established our starter. Everybody's there now? Yeah?
Can you make us, what YouTube channel would you suggest that we follow the most?
All right, the best one I've seen, well, for recipes is different from the one that I use for starting. So the person who I use to learn how to start is someone called Melissa K. Norris. Melissa K. Norris.
Norris.
Yes, I think her name, Melissa K. Norris. Let me give you the exact. Melissa K.
So can I just summarize what you just said?
Sure, go ahead.
So my understanding, and you correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong. So from day 1, Sunday morning, you have 1/4 cup of flour to 2 teaspoons of water. Tablespoons of water, depending on the consistency. 'Cause it might
Yeah,
be more.
yeah.
And you do that twice a day for 6 days.
Discarding.
Discarding half of it every morning. After the 6th day, you start doing it once a day,
right?
Every morning or evening, whichever you choose.
And you still discard.
Still discard half of it every day. And you're still adding every day. And you're going to continue doing that every day
For a month. Yeah, 4 weeks, a month.
Right. So at the end of that month now, and you're discarding every day, you're adding every day. At the end of that month, you have an established starter. You can add as much flour as you need. Let's say a cup of flour now to make it bubble up and get bigger, and use that starter to make bread.
Yep.
And once you make your bread, you should have some starter left by.
Yes, you'd never use all your starter.
Right. You're not gonna use everything because you're gonna have to start back from scratch and start leave a month again. But use that starter. You have some left over, and with what's left over, you continue to feed it every day as a good practice.
Well, after 6, let's say after the month,
After the month.
your starter is established.
Yes.
You don't have to treat it like a baby anymore. So let's say you make bread only on a Thursday, right? And you're going to do it Thursday morning. Wednesday afternoon, you take your starter out of the fridge, and let's say you're going to use 3 cups of flour. Or it doesn't matter. Let's say you need a cup of starter. You add probably a cup of flour and water, and I don't know the exact measure. You just go to the consistency that you feel. But of course, it always has to be good water. And then you let it stay a little bit outside. You see it bubbling. and then you can put it back in your fridge, or you can leave it out, and then when you bake, you take out your 1 cup of starter, and then you use it. You can feed it again and put it back in the fridge until the next week. Yes. Oh, sorry.
Do you discard after every feed or you discard once per day?
When? At what stage?
At the 1 to 4 weeks.
The 1 to 4 weeks. The first month, once a day. So after the first week of doing it twice, and you switch to once a day. Is that the point that you're asking?
First week then, like whenever you discard the first.
It's confusing. Yes.
I guess the question is, are you always discarding when you're adding?
Yes, when you're just starting your starter. Yeah.
Except if you're doing it twice a day, you're adding, then you're discarding twice a day.
No, first week, just discarding. You always discard just once a day. Always once a day. But in the first week, you feed twice.
Feed twice, discard
Once. Yes, but after the first week, you feed once, discard once. All right. To use for something else, yeah, without a doubt. We don't want to waste. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
So, I don't know if I know the answer, or somebody else will maybe, but I've heard that starter will be different at different elevations, but I haven't found the information of what that means. So, I had a starter here in Canada, and then in Colombia we're very highly elevated. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. So, do you know, like, does it know?
Did you cart over and try it?
I haven't tried, but I know that like maybe the consistency of the process.
The consistency might change the elevation. You just have to probably add more water.
Water, yeah.
And some elevations are.
Yeah, I don't think that should affect it much. Yeah. Yeah. Are any other questions about the process?
Is it clear now?
Yeah, go ahead.
When you use 1 cup of starter
Mm-hmm.
bread,
It depends on your recipe, and I'll tell you the 2 recipes that I generally use. Well, go ahead.
well, I was just asking, like, what is the ratio of starter to, like, say, for the recipe we got earlier, it was 3 cups of flour, right? For the whole, to make the bread, the loaf. Would I use 1 cup of the starter and then do the 3 cups?
It depends on the recipe, but I will share in a little bit once we're clear. Any other questions? Yes.
So after the month, you said you can add as much flour to the.
Yeah, as much. Yeah.
And then how much of the water?
Same thing. You just try to get the consistency. So when I was starting, it was a little thicker, but now my starter is not very thick. So it's really runny.
So at the beginning, you had said 1 cup of flour is 2 tablespoons of water. Is the tablespoons of water is equivalent to the weight of the
Yeah,
flour?
but
You keep that same.
yeah, that's what you should be doing. But remember, it also depends on your flour. Like some flours take more water than others. Yeah.
So you would say you would try to go by consistency.
Yeah. After you get it's established, you can decide. You can realize let's say you tried making a bread, and you realize that when it was a little water, it didn't rise as much, or so you work with it. It's intuition, sort of. Yeah, trial and error. Yeah.
And then you said with the flour, after the month, you can just do that once a week.
Yeah, once a week. And also with the feeding, I said it's best to start with rye because it's usually you have a better success rate with rye. But after your sourdough starter has been established, you can use whatever flour you want to use.
In regard to the grain,
Mm-hmm.
the flour, you use a blender to get it in that powder.
Yeah, you can use a Vitamix or a powerful blender to grind your flour.
Or if you have a grain mill, you can get a grain mill, and that will grind.
Yeah, that's what I use at home, a grain mill. Yeah. So you can use whichever flour you want. You don't have to use rye, but I've just learned that with rye, it gets it started faster. Yeah. But rye bread is not my favorite, so. But, yeah.
So which of the grains you find that you get better bread?
I'll be honest, I use everything mixed up, whatever I have grinded. But I like spelt. Spelt is usually a good. And einkorn is good. I tend to mix, when I'm making bread, I'll mix spelt, einkorn, and hard wheat. Yeah. Sorry, you had a question? Oh, yes. How about after? Let me Melissa. Is there any other questions while I look it up? Okay. All right, I will. I'm just looking up the name of the person who I got it. Melissa K. Norris. That's her name. Flour and water. No. So the question is, do I do this every day? No. No. So once your sourdough has been established, you just need to feed it once a week. Yeah. Once a week. I just, whichever day I remember, sometimes I forget. I say, oh, I haven't fed my starter. I'm not using it this week. I just feed it. Well, if you don't remember, the flour acts as food. So if you don't feed it, your sourdough starter it's gonna get rancid essentially. So you'll see that water is on the top, and then you'll have this thing that it has like an alcoholic flavor smell.
And it's black.
Yeah, it gets black. Some people, no. If you go, it will go for probably 2 weeks, 3 weeks without feeding. And it's not a good practice. Yeah, but it's food. Marilyn, you had a question?
Can I prevent it from my bread from going sour?
Okay.
This is sourdough.
Yeah, I know. I don't necessarily like the sour taste of sourdough. If I use sourdough because I don't have to buy yeast and it's more nutritious, but I am not a big fan of the sour taste. So there are different things you can do prevent it from getting sour. The longer you let your bread rise, it is the more sour it's gonna be. So usually for making sourdough, you have a 2 rise. So you put the flour together and you let it rise. All right, let's do a recipe to make it easier. All right, so I'll tell you about my recipe that I like to use. So as I said, I'm not a big fan of it being very sour, but I like to make a lot of sandwich bread. So I tend to make a sourdough sandwich bread recipe. All right. And this is another YouTuber. I have tried a recipe and I've tweaked it and it works well. That's a problem with me. I don't follow recipes to the T. I like to do my own thing.
One thing about sour is it's not just a flavor, but Elway says that the bread shouldn't be sour, and it actually should be sweet and soft and light.
Yeah, so
So these are characteristics that the bread shouldn't be sour. So what we should do is we should aim to make our bread sweet and not sour. It shouldn't have that sour flavor.
okay. So I'm gonna give you a recipe that I use all the time to make my sourdough bread, my sandwich bread. And I can share it. As I tell you, it's a YouTuber. Her name is, the YouTube channel is called Farmhouse on Boone. Boone, yeah.
B-O-O-N-E?
Yeah, Farmhouse on Boone. She has a lot of sourdough recipes. The thing you'll find out, there are not a lot of plant-based sourdough. A lot of persons on YouTube who do sourdough recipes. So you'll find a lot of sourdough recipes, but they do require non-plant-based things. There are not a lot of YouTubers that are plant-based that do sourdough. So there's a void there. If you want to start a YouTube channel, that's something that you could do. So a lot of the recipes that you will find on YouTube that have sourdough besides bread, they will have animal products in it. So you will have to tweak them to make them. But bread, of course, is not one of them. So, Boone, B-O-O-N-E, Farmhouse on Boone. Boone, yeah. I can actually, I can give you guys my contact information and you guys can text me and I can send you the information. That might be easier. All right. I can send you the paper that I have here, and I'll put the links of the persons that I'm talking about. I learned everything by YouTube. Yeah, YouTube University. There's another question? All right, so let's say, So I generally make sandwich bread because my husband loves sandwiches, so we tend to make sandwich bread. So I'll just run over the recipe and I'll tell you what I do. So you use 6 to 7, this makes 2 loaves, 6 to 7 cups of flour, ground flour. I just use regular ground flour. So I usually use mix hard wheat, because that is more of bread flour, the type of flour that you need for bread. And then I'll mix it with another type of flour that I may have. So if I have spelt that's grounded up, or corsican or kamut, or if I have einkorn, I'll use all of that together. Then that is the flour that I use. Then I will use 1 cup of starter, half cup of oil, because the oil makes it in the consistency that it will be able to cut like a sandwich bread. If you don't, it will be more dry and probably not so easy to cut. It won't be nice for a sandwich. You can eat it, but the oil does give it a nice texture, and you can use coconut oil. Then you'll use salt, and to sweeten it, I've used honey or I've used maple syrup. Really nice flavor. 1 tablespoon, but you can cut it to what? This is the original recipe, but I have used less oil and it comes out dry, and less salt. But I can send the recipe if you give me your information. Then you use 1.5 cups of water. So now with this recipe, I usually do it if I want to bake bread on the Friday or the following day. It won't be the morning because it takes so long. So let's say 8 o'clock after my kids go to bed, I put everything together. I put it in a glass container. If it's winter, I will cheat and turn on my oven while I'm putting everything on, turn it off so it doesn't get too hot, and then put it in not hot, the warm oven, so that it has a little more to rise, so I don't have to wait too long. So the next morning, probably next day at 12 o'clock. So you see, it's from 8 to 12 the next, I'll take it out. Hopefully it has risen to double. If it goes more than double, then you know that your bread is going to be very sour. So you try not to make it go more than double, not to let it rise. Then I'll shape it like how Merlin did with her bread in the roll, and I let it rise again. The first rise I have found out is when it gets really sour, if you let it rise too much in the first rise. So it all depends on your rise. So that's the thing with sourdough. It requires a lot of patience and a lot of eye work. You can't just leave it. Yeah, you can leave it, but the result might not be what you want. So that's the thing with sourdough. It requires, as I said, time and patience and vigilance. So if you realize that the time is very hot, then it's gonna rise faster. You have a faster bread. If it's cold, for example, if I do a bread in the winter, and I start at, let's say, 8 o'clock the night, 6 o'clock the next day is when it is ready. So it's almost 24 hours. So it's like 22 hours before it's ready to be baked. While in the summer, if I start at 8 o'clock, by around 3, 4, I can bake it the next day. So it all depends on temperature. All right, so it's the rise that makes it sour. All right, there's another question. Half a cup, or to your liking. I have kids, so you have to, they have a sweeter.
Do you have to use sweetener?
You don't. But it's a honey wheat, bread. Yeah.
What about oil? Do you have to use oil?
Well, it does if you want it to be of the texture to make a sandwich bread. If not, it will be, like the regular sourdough bread that you find like a loaf. Yeah. So that is how it will.
Is it dry?
It's not dry, but it's not sandwichy. If you understand what I'm trying to say. It's not the best type of, and it's not a bit more dry, yeah.
6 to 7 cups.
No, you use it for different. If you want a sandwich, you just have, it's best to use a little bit of oil. But you can limit, as I said, the recipe asks for half a cup of oil. I sometimes even go to a quarter cup. So it all depends on the oil and just trial and error. And if I just don't have it, I just use what I have. Any other questions? What time do we have to end, Auntie Cam? Oh, using the discard, yes. So we tend to limit sourdough starter to just bread, but there are so many other things that you can use it for. So on a weekly basis in our house, we use it for bread, yes, but there are some times when I just don't have the time, but I always use it to make crackers. Crackers to have with soup, and it comes out really nice. So I'll tell you what I do. So again, I don't have a measurement, I just eyeball it. So I will take out some starter. Let's say I take out this amount of starter. I will add a little bit of oil. You do need a little bit of oil for the crackers, or it's going to be very dry and not really palatable. So I'll probably use a starter. I add a little bit of oil. I add herbs, probably some garlic sauce, some garlic powder, and I put it on a baking tray. Just lay it out. So you don't add anything else. You're just seasoning the sourdough starter essentially. Put in salt and then you bake it for. So what I do, I put my oven at 270, bake it for 25 minutes, take it out, and then I score it with like a pizza cutter. Put it back in for another 10, 15 minutes, and then when it's done, that's your. Oh, I tend to put like nuts on the top, like sesame seeds or. And
Put no flour in there.
nope, don't add any flour. Just use your sourdough starter alone. And you make crackers out of it. Just a little bit of oil and seasoning. Because the oil, sorry? 270. For 25 minutes. You don't want it to be too hard because you want to score it so that you can break up the crackers. So another thing that I do, sorry, you have a question? Yeah, just what is, you can use a discard or you can even use your sourdough starter. You just take out some and use it. Yeah. Another thing that we make English muffins. You ever seen those English muffins where you open it and you have the holes? We make English muffins with that too. And it's an overnight thing. So it is, all right, let me give you the exact measurements. So that's for another breakfast meal. And that one is pretty easy too. And you do it in your cast iron stillets, all right? So 2 cups of flour, 1 cup of water, and ½ cup of sourdough starter. You mix it up. You don't put anything else on it. You put it over, and you need to leave it in there to rise for 12 to 24 hours, right? Yeah, I can send it to you. It's a PDF. As I said, the person that I use all the time. Then the next morning, that's when you add, you can add a teaspoon of honey to just give it a little sweetener and the salt. And if you use baking soda, you can add a little baking soda so it doesn't have such of a sour taste. Yeah, so you don't use, just eliminate it. And what you do, you just drop it in your, when it's cast on still, it is very hot, you drop it in and you see it, it's almost like dumplings, like it just rises and then you just flip it. The smaller it is, the better it is. And then when you cut it, you'll see those holes like the English muffins that you buy in the store.
And the recipe you're gonna send me.
Yes, I can send it to you.
Before we go, did you already discuss the benefits of natural leavening?
Yeah, I did. I told them. Yeah. All right. Any last questions before we go? All right. Well, if any.
I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but natural leavening is very good probiotic.
Oh, I didn't mention that. You can.
It's a natural probiotic, and that's why it's really good for the gut. If you have a lot of people have gut issues or allergies to wheat and all these things, but using natural leavening actually helps with that because it actually helps balance the gut flora because it's a natural probiotic. So you might even see differences in your stool. And
Oh yeah, you'll go to the bathroom more.
Natural leavening because it helps the bacteria, and that's one of the best benefits of using natural leavening.
I'll give you my email address. One last question I'll give.
I am a bit confused because Frida Fox talks about we shouldn't use fermented food, and sourdough is
Fermented.
fermentation. So can someone give me
All
some
yeast is fermented. Even the one that we use as traditional yeast is fermented because when you put it in the sugar and then it kind of bubbles up, right? That's fermentation. So that's why she counsels. That's the only food that she counsels for us to actually eat that's fermented is bread.
We have to go out later
And that's
this
why
morning.
she said we should
In the
wait.
meantime, we're gonna
Because
tap
when
some
you wait,
trees.
actually, a lot of those properties die off. 3 days. It dies off. That's why.
Okay.
Yes, we're not supposed to really eat freshly baked bread.
Okay, so I'll give you my email address if you want the information. Yeah.
Is the 48 hours also for sourdough bread or just for
It's for both any bread because once the bread is baked, right, it's still active. So for every bread, at least that's my understanding. I could be wrong. I'm not the say on this, but this is my understanding.
What about you put it in a freezer for 2 weeks or so?
For 2 weeks, eat it. 2 weeks. That's a long time.
Still kill it?
It's still the probiotics are still there. And you will actually see it in your body when you use it. Your body will actually. Personally, this is my personal testing. When I started using natural lefty, my stool changed, and I wasn't eating the bread fresh. I was eating it days later.
And you dry back the bread?
And sometimes you could sweep back the bread.
No, that's
What is sweet back?
dry back. That's the best way to eat your bread. Twice baked.
What is sweet back?
Twice baked.
What is that?
So you bake it and then bake it again?
Bake and toast it.
Okay, bake and then you toast it. Okay.
The bread needs to be dry. Dry. And crushed.
Oh, like Melba toast? Oh, like Melba toast? Not that hard.
Oh, I can give you my email address. Okay. GAE. And if anyone wants some sourdough, you can have some. GAE. LIN. LIN. The number 18. Just 18 at yahoo.com. So I'll do it again. GAE, as in Grace Ann. GAE LIN 18 at yahoo.com. You're welcome. You're welcome. Do you have a glass container you want to put it in? Yeah. Yeah, you can make a bread with this now.
Are you ready, Auntie Gracie?
Oh yeah, let's pray. All right, let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege that we had to gather together. Thank you for the information that was spread and shared. Dear God, I pray that we will use what you have given us to improve our health and to share with others and just be with everyone here, I pray. Amen.